Our opening words this morning are from a 14th century Dominican monk and mystic, Meister Eckhart. If the only prayer you ever say in your whole life is thank you, that'll be enough. By this, he meant that the most important prayer is not one of petition, in which we ask for something for ourselves or for another, but a prayer of gratitude. It could be a prayer of gratitude to God, but it could also be a prayer of gratitude to your spouse or partner, for your child or for your friends, for your life or for the earth itself. Indeed, when we begin counting our blessings, the source are many and the gratitude is profound.
Good morning. I would like to invite our young friends and anyone else who would like to join them up for a story. Who here has had a bad day? Be honest. Raise them high. Let's look around. Really, keep your arms up. Look around. It's comforting to know, right? You're not the only one. Our story today is about Alexander's bad day. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running, and I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car kit in his breakfast cereal box, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But in my breakfast cereal box, all I found was breakfast cereal. I think I'll move to Australia. In the carpool, Mrs. Gibson let Becky have a seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window, too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said if I don't get a seat by the window, I am going to be car sick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. At singing time, she said I sang too loud. At counting time, she said I left out 16. Who needs 16? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said that Philip Parker was his best friend, and that Albert Moyo was his next best friend, and that I was only his third best friend. I hope you sit on a tack, I said to Paul. I hope the next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone, the ice cream part falls off the cone part and lands in Australia. There were 2 cupcakes in Philip Parker's lunch bag, and Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds, and Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on the top. Guess whose mother forgot to put in dessert? It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. That's what it was, because after school my mom took us all to the dentist, and Dr. Fields found a cavity in just me. Come back next week and we'll fix it, said Dr. Fields. Next week, I said, I'm going to Australia. On the way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot, and while we were waiting for my mom to go get the car, Anthony made me fall where it was muddy. And then when I started crying because of the mud, Nick said I was a crybaby. And while I was punching Nick for saying crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and fighting. I'm having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, I told everybody. No one even answered. So then we went to the shoe store to buy some sneakers. Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes, but the shoe man said we're all sold out. They made me buy plain old white ones, but they can't make me wear them. When we picked up my dad at his office, he said I couldn't play with his copying machine, but I forgot. He also said to watch out for the books on his desk, and I was careful as could be, except for my elbow. He also said don't fool around with his phone, but I think I called Australia. My dad said please don't pick him up anymore. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There were lima beans for dinner, and I hate limas. There was kissing on TV, and I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes. My marble went down the drain. I had to wear my railroad train pajamas. I hate my railroad train pajamas. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It has been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says some days are like that. Even in Australia.
Good morning. I'm really starting to feel like when I come here, I'm coming home. Thank you for inviting me back. And thank you for this wonderful music. This morning's reading are the words of Josh Barad from his article, No, You Don't Have to Feel Grateful All the Time. Here's Why. He writes, I should be grateful. If I got a mala every time I hear those words, I'd have a lot of beads. Just recently, a woman said this phrase after spending several minutes crying. Underneath her words, all I felt was her anger and sadness. Like many of us, somewhere along the way, she was told that she's supposed to be happy and grateful for what she has, grateful for all the opportunities that life has presented her, grateful for the little time she has for herself. She was told to shy away from expressing her true emotions and to spend her time reciting affirmations that she didn't necessarily believe in instead. As I listened to her story, I recognized a pattern that has played out in my own life. It goes something like this. I feel sad. I'm not supposed to feel sad. There's no reason to be sad. I'm not that kind of person. My life is great. I should be grateful. We judge, reason, analyze, and rationalize our feelings in an attempt to feel in control. Yet we often forget that our feelings are there for a very good reason. When we allow ourselves to naturally express how we're really feeling, a shift occurs and new feelings tend to show up. A few moments of feeling anything but grateful in your body allows it to change. Imagine giving yourself time to feel whatever you're really feeling. Imagine shelving the judgment, analysis, and rationalization for just a few moments. The words of Josh Barad. An old Jewish man was walking along the beach one day with his grandson. Now, let me tell you about this old man. All his life, nothing ever satisfied him. He complained about everything. He always focused on what he didn't have instead of appreciating what he did have. The only thing he never complained about was walking along the beach with his grandson, which is what he was doing on this fine summer day. Suddenly, a giant wave appeared on the horizon and headed toward the shore. It engulfed the grandson, lifted him up, and carried him out to sea. The grandfather immediately got down on his knees and looked up at the sky. "Lord," he said, "please bring back my grandson. I promise I will change my ways. I won't be dissatisfied any longer. I will never complain about anything. I will be grateful for whatever comes my way, and I will not focus on what I am not given. Just please return my grandson to me." Just then the wave appeared again, this time carrying the grandson toward shore. The wave rushed over the sand and gently deposited the grandson on the ground and receded out to sea. The grandfather, with tears in his eyes, looked at his grandson for a good long time. He then turned to the sky and said, "He had a hat." Best joke ever. How ungrateful this man was. His prayers had been answered. His grandson was returned to him. Yet instead of being grateful, he complained about what was not returned. From childhood, we have been taught to be grateful for what we have, to count our blessings, to roll with the punches, to grin and bear it, to have the patience of Job, to make the best of it, to take your medicine. Complaining about anything was met with a sharp rebuke and charges of being an ingrate. When I didn't finish my vegetables and was told that there are people in China that go to bed hungry, my response was always, "Well, send these to them." I always thought it was a very witty retort, but it was never greeted with the kind of humorous reception I thought it deserved. Quite the contrary. Barbara Rainey, in her book, Growing Together in Gratitude, writes that gratitude is not natural. It is an attitude that must be taught and nurtured. And it is a task more difficult for parents in the West because of our abundance and prosperity. And Neil Burton, in an article entitled The Psychology of Gratitude, tells us that gratitude never came easily to us human beings and is a diminishing virtue in modern times. In our consumerist society, we focus on what we lack or what other people have that we don't. In thought and in literature, the ungrateful person was cast in the most negative light. In Shakespeare's King Lear, for example, Lear says, "Ingratitude, thou marble-hearted fiend." I don't do Shakespeare that well, but bear with me. "More hideous when thou showest thee in a child than the sea monster. How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child." How many of us have thought that? For philosopher David Hume, ingratitude is, quote, "the most horrible and unnatural crime that a person is capable of committing." And for Immanuel Kant, the philosopher, it was quite simply the essence of vileness. And even science weighs in on this issue of gratitude. There are studies that contend that some people are not hardwired to show gratitude. That for some of us, gratitude just doesn't come as easy. Research suggests that these differences may be rooted in our brains, our genes, and even our personalities. Perhaps the strongest evidence supporting the genetic basis for gratitude comes from a study of twins. In this study by Michael Steger and colleagues, identical twins who essentially have the same DNA had more similar self-reported levels of gratitude than did fraternal twins who share only 50% of their DNA, suggesting that there may be a genetic component to gratitude. In addition, some people may have a deficiency in the genes responsible for the secretion of the hormone oxytocin and the chemical dopamine, both of which are associated with increased levels of gratitude. So some of us have a built-in excuse. Or, science tells us, it may be differences in structure and activity across various brain regions that may relate to differences in gratitude across individuals. Some parts of the brain might actually be anatomically different in more grateful people. Or it could be certain personality factors that can act as barriers to gratitude. In particular, those prone to envy, materialism, narcissism, and cynicism can be thought of as, quote, thieves of thankfulness. While lack of gratitude is generally cast in a negative light in our society, the presence of gratitude is seen as a cure-all for what ails us and is deemed almost necessary as a trait of good and kind people. We all know the Aesop fable about a slave who pulls a thorn out of the paw of a lion. Sometime later, the slave and the lion are captured, and the slave is thrown to the lion. The hungry lion rushes toward the slave, but upon recognizing his friend, he fawns upon him and licks his hands like a friendly dog. Gratitude, Aesop concludes, is the sign of noble souls. Noble souls. Study after study after study has linked gratitude with increased satisfaction, motivation, and energy, better sleep and health, and reduced stress and sadness. Grateful people are much more engaged with their environment, leading to greater personal growth and self-acceptance, and stronger feelings of purpose, meaning, and specialness. Gratitude is linked to a host of psychological, physical, and social benefits, stronger immune systems, lower blood pressure, more feelings of joy, and a greater sense of social connection. And here am I talking about the case against gratitude. So why not feel gratitude all the time? If gratitude is so good for us, and if lack of gratitude is hideous, horrible, and vile, why not choose gratitude? Certainly it's easy to be grateful when life is going well, when your family is healthy, and your job is motivating and self-fulfilling, and when the Eagles are winning. But what about when nothing seems to be going your way? How can you feel grateful when you're unhappy, struggling, bitter, sad, frustrated? It can be much harder to feel genuine gratitude when, let's face it, life sucks. Author Ben Schwartz offers this. We've read many self-help books that push the gratitude idea. Make a gratitude list, keep a gratitude journal, focus on what you are grateful for in order to feel more positive and attract more good things into your life. But most people secretly find it very difficult to truly, genuinely feel gratitude when life is really hard. Those times that you actually need positive energy the most. Indeed, many of us will even feel guilty for not feeling grateful, particularly as we approach Thanksgiving, the holiday that is synonymous with gratitude. And these feelings of guilt, in turn, can propel us even further into sadness or frustration or complacency. Now look, I'm not a proponent of ingratitude, so don't get me wrong. I get the importance of feeling gratitude and sharing it with others. But when life is hard, there are reasons, good reasons, for forsaking gratitude, at least in the moment. For one, gratitude can become a tool for avoiding other healthy emotions. It can sometimes overshadow or suffocate or diminish other emotions that naturally arise during life's trials and tribulations. While gratitude can help balance feelings like sorrow, regret, or sadness, it can become dangerous when it interferes with the ability to experience and express a wide range of emotions, including those emotions needed to recover or heal from deep pain or loss. If we don't acknowledge and confront these feelings, we may never get past them. And gratitude can often serve to sidetrack us, to smooth things over, so that we don't have to acknowledge and confront these feelings. As Josh Barad told us in the opening reading, we often forget that those feelings are there for a very good reason. Using gratitude to avoid less pleasant emotions can impede longer-term growth and progress. And this is particularly evident in use of the words, at least. At least. My youngest son is struggling with opioid use. Yes, but at least your older boy is doing well in school. My wife and I are having marital problems. Well, at least you have a marriage. We're having problems making ends meet. At least you have a roof over your head. When we hear and believe someone else say at least, or tell ourselves at least, we give ourselves permission to deflect the challenges or difficulties in front of us, and so put off or avoid dealing with them directly. Not feeling gratitude doesn't mean choosing anger or bitterness. It just means that we decide not to raise our expectations and risk disappointment or betrayal. It allows us instead to be neutral, to be more open to life's little pleasures as they come or if they come. It helps us to avoid taking things for granted. A wolf had been gorging on an animal he had killed when suddenly a small bone in the meat stuck in his throat, and he could not swallow it. He soon felt terrible pain in his throat and ran up and down, groaning and looking for something to relieve the pain. He tried to induce everyone he met to remove the bone. "I would give anything," said he, "if you would take it out." At last, a crane agreed to try and told the wolf to lie on his side and open his jaws as wide as he could. Then the crane put its long neck down the wolf's throat and with its beak loosened the bone till at last it got it out. "Will you kindly give me the reward you promised?" asked the crane. The wolf grinned and showed his teeth and said, "Be content. You have put your head inside a wolf's mouth and taken it out again in safety. That ought to be reward enough for you." Sometimes just knowing that our head is inside the wolf's mouth and that we are able to remove it safely is enough to satisfy us. Sometimes we need to just embrace our feelings of sadness or defeat or anger without trying to sugarcoat it or look for a silver lining. Sometimes we just need to be content with what is. Rachel Fincy Woods suggests this: you can go through the motions of showing gratitude even when you don't feel like it. Usually by practicing gratitude, you'll eventually be able to feel more grateful. But the point is, she says, not to get twisted up into some unnecessarily psychological knot by judging and berating yourself for not always feeling thankful. So, she concludes, be kind to yourself if you're having a tough time feeling gratitude at this moment. For Woods, you don't have to feel grateful in order to be grateful. And Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg, in this closing quote, perhaps expresses best our need to embrace our true feelings when things are not going well, with our need to begin the healing process. She writes, I encourage myself to remember that being grateful doesn't mean I have to keep a gratitude jar that counts my blessings. It just means I can reset my thoughts, just like in meditation, and choose instead to gently settle my attention on something positive. We don't erase the pain, it's still there, but we can broaden our perspective by opening to our pain and also opening to things other than the suffering we feel. I wish you all peace and joy this holiday season, with or without a hat. So may it be.